Imagine for a moment that you are at the lowest point of your life. Everything you built has crumbled. The relationships you trusted have fractured, the dreams you carried have gone silent, and the version of yourself you once believed in feels like a stranger you can barely recognize. You are exhausted, not just physically, but in that deep, wordless way that lives beneath the surface, where no amount of sleep reaches, where no distraction is loud enough to drown out the quiet but relentless question, what was any of this for, now? Here is what the world will tell you in that moment. It will tell you to recover, to heal, to get back to normal as quickly as possible. It will offer you comfort pills, productivity hacks, motivational slogans, and the reassurance that better days are coming. It will treat your suffering like a malfunction, like a bug in the system that needs to be patched and deleted as fast as possible. But what if that is exactly the wrong response? What if the culture of comfort, the obsession with eliminating pain, and the relentless pursuit of ease is not saving you, but slowly hollowing you out? What if the suffering you are running from is not the obstacle to your greatness, but the very mechanism through which your greatness is forged? Today, we explore one of the most misunderstood and most powerful minds in the history of human thought, Friedrich Nietzsche, a philosopher who did not just theorize about suffering, but lived inside it completely, and emerged from it with a truth so radical, so uncompromising, that the world is still not fully ready to hear it. By the end of this journey, you will not only understand Nietzsche's philosophy of suffering, you will see your own pain in an entirely different light, and the final revelation we will uncover is perhaps the most transformative of all. It has the power to change not just how you think, but how you live. But before we go, take a moment to subscribe to this channel. Leave your like and share this with someone who is going through something difficult right now. Because what you are about to hear is not just philosophy, it is a lifeline. Let us begin with an uncomfortable truth. We live in a civilization that is terrified of pain. Not the kind of physical pain that signals injury, but the deeper existential suffering that comes from loss, failure, grief, betrayal, and the shattering of identity. We have built entire industries around its removal. Pharmaceutical companies sell numbness, social media sells distraction, entertainment sells escape and self-help. Culture sells the promise that if you just follow the right steps, optimize the right habits, and maintain the right mindset, you can engineer a life where suffering is minimized and comfort is permanent. And on the surface, this seems not just reasonable but compassionate. Why would anyone want to suffer? Why would anyone choose difficulty over ease? Why would any sane person argue that pain has value? Nietzsche's answer is devastating, because without suffering, there is no depth. Without depth, there is no meaning, and without meaning, there is no life worth living. He was not being cruel. He was being honest in a way that our age has almost entirely forgotten. That this drive cannot be activated in the absence of resistance. You cannot develop strength without weight. You cannot develop courage without fear. You cannot develop wisdom without confusion and loss and failure. Think about this in your own life. The moments that shaped you most profoundly, were they the comfortable ones? Were they the days when everything went smoothly, when nothing challenged you, when life delivered exactly what you expected? Or were they the moments of fracture, the betrayals, the failures, the periods of darkness where you had absolutely no idea how you were going to get through? The suffering did not break you. It revealed you. It showed you what you were actually made of, beneath the performance, beneath the identity, beneath the carefully maintained image of who you thought you were and what it showed you. Even if it was painful, even if it was humbling, was closer to the truth of who you are than anything comfort could ever teach you. But Nietzsche goes even further, and this is where his philosophy becomes truly radical. He introduces the concept of Amor Fati, love of fate, and it is perhaps the most demanding idea he ever proposed. Amor Fati does not mean simply accepting what happens to you. It does not mean passive resignation or the quiet swallowing of bitterness. It means something almost incomprehensible to the modern mind. It means loving what happens to you, not tolerating it, not surviving it, not eventually making peace with it, but genuinely loving it as the necessary and perfect unfolding of exactly what you needed to become who you are meant to be. Nietzsche wrote his formula for greatness in a human being is Amor Fati, that one wants nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity, not merely bear what is necessary, still less, conceal it, but love it. Read that again. Not merely bear what is necessary, but love. This is not the philosophy of someone who had an easy life. This is the philosophy of someone who had been broken repeatedly and who chose again and again not merely to endure, but to affirm everything that had happened as necessary. Everything that had happened as meaningful, everything that had happened as his stay with me. Because in the next part of this journey, we are going to go even deeper into the psychology of suffering and uncover the hidden mechanism that Nietzsche identified, which explains why some people are destroyed by pain while others are forged by it, and why the difference has nothing to do with luck or circumstance, but everything to do with the story you tell about what your suffering means. To understand why some people are transformed by suffering while others are consumed by it. Nietzsche introduced one of the most psychologically penetrating concepts in all of philosophical literature: ressentiment, a French word he used deliberately to describe something that has no perfect equivalent in English. Ressentiment is not simply resentment. Though it contains resentment, it is a specific psychological orientation toward suffering and toward those who seem not to suffer. It is the inner posture of someone who has been hurt, who has been denied, who has been defeated, and who, rather than transforming that experience into fuel, turns it inward into a festering bitterness that slowly poisons the entire inner life. Nietzsche observed that ressentiment is the default response to suffering for those who lack the inner strength to transform it. When life crushes someone, and they do not have the philosophical or psychological resources to make meaning from that. Crushing, they begin to build an identity around their victimhood. They define themselves by what was done to them, by who failed them, by what they were denied. And paradoxically, this feels like strength. It feels like moral high ground. It feels like justice. But Nietzsche saw it as the most dangerous form of self-betrayal, because the person consumed by ressentiment is not actually processing their suffering. They are preserving it. They are feeding it. They are constructing an entire worldview around it that ensures they will never have to confront the most terrifying question of all. What am I going to do with this psychologist, Viktor Frankl, who survived the Nazi concentration camps and built his entire therapeutic framework on the question of meaning? Echoed Nietzsche's insight directly. He wrote, "When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. The difference between those who survived the camps psychologically intact and those who did not was not the severity of their suffering. It was the presence or absence of meaning. It was whether the suffering pointed somewhere or whether it simply was." Carl Jung understood this too. He wrote that neurosis is always a substitute for legitimate suffering. In other words, the anxiety, the depression, the existential emptiness that so many people carry is often not caused by too much suffering, but by the avoidance of the specific suffering that would actually catalyze growth, by the refusal to face the inner darkness that wants to be integrated. And Nietzsche, a century before both of them, named the fork in the road with brutal clarity. You can let your suffering make you smaller, more bitter, more contracted, more defended, more certain that the world owes you something. It will never pay, or you can let it make you larger, more honest, more stripped of illusion, more fundamentally yourself than you have ever been before. Think about the people you most admire, the ones who carry themselves with genuine depth, genuine warmth, genuine unshakable presence. How many of them had easy lives? How many of them arrived at that depth through comfort and the absence of challenge? And how many of them were shaped by fires that most people would not have survived? Nietzsche spoke of what he called the Übermensch, often translated as the Overman or Superman, and again this concept has been catastrophically misrepresented. The Übermensch is not a racial category, it is not a political ideal, it is not about superiority over other human beings, it is about superiority over your previous self. It is the person who has faced the full weight of existence, the chaos, the meaninglessness, the suffering, and who has chosen, despite all of it, to create meaning, to affirm life, to become the author of their own values, rather than a passive inheritor of someone else's. The Übermensch does not transcend suffering. They transcend the need to be rescued from it. They no longer require the world to be different in order to be fully alive. They have made peace with reality, not because reality is always kind, but because they have discovered something within themselves that is stronger than any circumstance. And this is where Nietzsche's philosophy stops being abstract and starts being deeply personal, because the question it puts before you is not an intellectual one. It is an existential one. Who are you becoming inside your suffering right now? Are you contracting or expanding? Are you building a case against the world or building a self that the world cannot take from you? Are you waiting for the pain to end before you start living? Or are you willing to consider that the pain is not the interruption of your life, but one of its most essential chapters? Because here is what Nietzsche understood, and what our comfort-obsessed culture has almost entirely forgotten. The self is not something you are born with and simply discover. It is something you forge. It is hammered into shape by resistance, by difficulty, by the sustained encounter with everything that does not go your way. And every time you meet that resistance, not with avoidance, not with bitterness, not with the demand that it be removed, but with presence, with courage, with the willingness to be changed by it. You add another layer to the person you are becoming in the final part of this journey. We are going to arrive at Nietzsche's most profound and most personal truth, the one that ties everything together and reveals not just what suffering is for, but what your suffering, specifically, the particular shape of your pain, the unique contours of what you have lost and what you have endured, is preparing you to become what you are about to hear, may be the most important thing you have encountered in a very long time throughout this entire exploration. There is a question that has been quietly building beneath the surface, and it is this: if suffering is the forge of greatness, if resistance is the mechanism of growth, if Amor Fati is the posture of the truly powerful, then what does that mean for the specific suffering that you are carrying right now? Not suffering in the abstract, not the philosophical category, but yours. Nietzsche wrote, "Become who you are." And he did not mean this as a simple affirmation. He meant it as a command, as a demand, as the most rigorous and most terrifying instruction a human being can receive, because becoming who you are requires first dismantling who you are not, and that dismantling is almost always painful. The identities we outgrow resist being shed, the beliefs that no longer serve us cling with remarkable ferocity. The relationships, the careers, the versions of ourselves that we have invested years in building do not dissolve quietly. They fracture, they burn, and the burning feels like destruction, when it is actually purification. Think about the caterpillar inside the chrysalis. A fact that biologists confirm, and that Nietzsche would have loved, is that the transformation from caterpillar to butterfly is not a gentle reorganization. The caterpillar's body literally dissolves. It breaks down almost entirely into a kind of cellular soup before the new form emerges. What looks from the outside like a quiet, dormant waiting is on the inside. A complete and total dissolution of everything the creature previously was. And so it is with human transformation. The periods of your life that felt most like falling apart were often the periods in which the most essential reconstruction was quietly underway. The depression that followed your greatest failure, the grief that arrived after your most significant loss, the confusion that came when the path you were certain of suddenly disappeared. These were not punishments. They were not evidence of your inadequacy. They were not signs that you were broken beyond repair. They were the chrysalis. Nietzsche's final gift to us is not just a philosophy of suffering. It is a philosophy of trust. Trust not in a God, not in a system, not in the promise of a better future, but in the process itself. In the fundamental conviction that what you are going through, however dark, however disorienting, however apparently meaningless, is not happening to you, it is happening for you. And more precisely, it is happening as you. You are not a passive recipient of your circumstances. You are being shaped by them actively, continuously, irreversibly, into something that only this specific combination of joy and loss, victory and defeat, love and betrayal could have produced. And when you begin to see it that way, when you begin to look at your pain not as an interruption but as an instruction, not as a punishment, but as a sculptor's tool, not as evidence that life has failed you, but as evidence that life is working on you, everything changes. Not because the pain disappears, but because you are no longer at war with it. Amor Fati. Love your fate, not in spite of what it has cost you, but because of it, because the cost is the curriculum, because the wound is the wisdom, because the breaking is the beginning. Nietzsche himself wrote to those human beings who are of any concern to me, I wish suffering, desolation, sickness, ill treatment, indignities. I wish that they should not remain unfamiliar with profound self-contempt, the torture of self-mistrust, the wretchedness of the vanquished. I have no pity for them because I wish them the only thing that can prove today, whether one is worth anything or not, that one endures. This is not cruelty. This is the highest form of respect. It is the refusal to treat you as fragile. It is the insistence that you are capable of more than comfort has allowed you to discover. It is the philosophical equivalent of someone who loves you enough to tell you the truth. So as we close this journey, the question is not whether you have suffered. You have. The question is not whether more suffering is coming. It is the question, is what you will do with it. Will you let it make you smaller? Or will you let it make you true? Will you spend your life negotiating with pain, trying to minimize it, escape it, explain it away? Or will you turn toward it with the radical acceptance of someone who has understood that this is the material greatness is made from Nietzsche, did not emerge from his suffering with easy answers. He emerged with something far more valuable, a self that had been tested so completely that nothing could shake it, a vision of human potential so expansive that the world spent decades trying to contain it, a philosophy forged not in comfort but in fire. And now the fire is yours. What you build inside it is entirely up to you. If this exploration moved something in you, share it with someone who needs it. Leave your thoughts in the comments because philosophy does not grow in silence. It grows in the collision of minds. And if you are still here, know this, you are not broken, You are not behind, you are not failing. You are in the forge. And the forge means something is being made. Stay curious, stay awake, and above all, keep becoming. Thanks for looking.